Welcome back to the OU Sports Podcast. Colton, Sulley, Raser here. Got a lot to get to. Obviously, this is probably the craziest time of year. Can't look off my phone for like more than 5 minutes, and can't even really podcast because, as you might have seen last podcast, we went over a lot of stuff, and then literally by the time it dropped, it was all.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we don't look like idiots right after this drops and everything that we said would happen, the complete opposite happens. But we'll see. We probably just missed 2 or 3 transfers in that intro alone.
Probably so. Anyway, lots to get to. Today, I mean, we were at practice, Lewis, watching, not very many coaches out there. I think, they're on the trail, but the big shock right when we got to practice was Tawi Walker was practicing, who's in the portal. Andrew Rame and Tyler Guyton both were not practicing. Not too shocking because they've declared for the draft, but literally when we were leaving the field, I looked at Lewis and said, Cayden Green's in the portal. And that was a shock. Lewis, what does this mean? I know you've written about him before and talked to some folks in his camp, but shocking news to say the least. What does this mean for OU?
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, last week when Savion Byrd went to the portal, I mean, that's a guy who obviously had an up and down stretch at OU, and you think, okay, it's a little weird, it's a little concerning. You think he probably has a starting job next year with all the departures. Cayden Green, though, I mean, this is a guy who established himself as a starter, as probably the best offensive lineman returning for the Sooners next year. And all of a sudden, now you got Jacob Sexton, you got the Michigan State transfer, Spencer Brown. That's it, though. Like, McCade Matoyer's done. Andrew Rame's in the draft. Tyler Guyton's going to the draft. Who am I missing? Walter Rouse, he's out of eligibility.
I mean, they've got Troy Everett, the Appalachian State transfer, who played a little bit and looked kind of good, but then I think got benched after a couple games.
Yeah,
so.
and he was hurt today even.
Yeah,
so
not looking great for the what once was a position that I wasn't too worried about for the Sooners, and maybe like add a Spencer Brown or add one more guy, maybe the North Texas guy that they've offered. But that was kind of a position I was feeling kind of more good about. This was obviously pre-Andrew Rame's decision and pre-Cayden Green, but yeah, shocked to say the least. I think not only us media members and you fans were shocked. I think OU was shocked about this. I mean, Bill Bedenbaugh and Brent Venables can't be, happy that this happened. But the more shocking thing about it is, like we were talking at lunch, Lewis, like he started the majority of the games down the stretch and 100% had a starting spot waiting for him, which is why we saw Savion Byrd enter the portal and other guys. So, but Cayden Green, if you don't know, was like a top 90 player in the 2023 recruiting class, major talent guy from Missouri. Went to the same high school as Williams Nwaneri. But this one hurts if you're OU.
Yeah, definitely. I think McCade Matoyer, I mean, we were asking him, he's one of the guys we talked to at open practice earlier today, and he was like, yeah, obviously I noticed he was gone, but just assume he was out taking a final or something. So the players are shocked. Everybody is just shocked today. And, I mean, it's still Bill Bedenbaugh, so, like, you're not ultra concerned because, I mean, he sent guys to the NFL. He's developed guys.
Bill Bedenbaugh wasn't at practice today, so he might be out recruiting Cayden Green's replacement right now as we speak, but Cayden Green's definitely going to be a hard guy to replace. And then Jackson Arnold, I think, was asked about it. He said he had no idea, which that's going to be one of the guys primarily tasked with protecting Jackson Arnold, or it was going to be, and probably a guy that Jackson Arnold relied on next year. So big development.
Bowl game is going to be huge. I mean, to get the guys that you have developed, obviously you got to do work in the portal. But to get those guys that you have developed, to get Troy Everett, some of those guys, the bowl game, you just can't overemphasize how important that's going to be. And it might be a good thing that Andrew Rame, we didn't see him, we didn't see Tyler Guyton, the guys who are going to the draft, move them on and have this as kind of a precursor of what we could see next year.
Yeah, for sure. And it was kind of a downer if you're an OU fan today, obviously, because it happened about an hour after OU landed a massive get in Deion Burks, the receiver from Purdue, who I think, is so talented and could, depending on next year, be a second-round draft pick. I mean, this guy's a freak. He's immediately going to be cemented in that group of receivers that OU has returning next season with Jalil Farouk, Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson, Andrell Anthony. OU's wide receiver room next year is stacked, Lewis.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you wish that some of those guys could put on 100 pounds or maybe even 200 and go play offensive line. It's so interesting, the contrast. I mean, at receiver, you've got those guys, and then you got 5 guys entering from the class of 2024. Offensive line.
Zion Kearney.
Yeah, offensive line, you got almost nobody. So
and I feel like a name we forget about in all this is Jacquez Petaway, who was a high 4-star last year. That we were talking a little bit earlier off camera, but I think the receiver room is getting a little packed. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple portal entries here in the next week or so before the bowl game, just because of how. I mean, this is a good problem for OU to have. Like, your receiver room is too crowded with talent right now, especially when the freshmen come in. But wouldn't be shocked to see a couple portal departures in that position.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, you think, I don't want to speculate too much, but you think Jaden Gibson, that's a guy who's got a tremendous amount of talent, but it's such a packed room. Is there a spot for him? I mean, Gavin Freeman and Jacquez Petaway, they're going to be competing for the slot spot. Whoever doesn't get that, is there much playing time there? And then you think of a guy like Brennan Thompson, who, he showed his potential at the end of the year. He had a couple big plays down the stretch, but I don't know if there's any playing time waiting for him next year with who OU is going to get.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, good problem to have. Emmett Jones is cooking. Definitely a good problem if you're OU. But Deion Burks is a big get. Obviously, is going to get overlooked because of the Cayden Green news. But, man, I just can't believe the contrast that OU fans have gone through today in a matter of hours. I mean, super excited about the Deion Burks get, and then equally as upset about the Cayden Green news, but keep it with OUdaily.com as we have a tracker. We'll probably put it up here on the screen, but a tracker of all the commits and draft declarations and portal departures, but also everybody that's been offered by OU in the portal and who have visited OU in the portal. So check out OUdaily.com, and hopefully we'll have more on the Cayden Green news here in the next coming days as well. So keep it with us there. Lewis, who are some of the guys that you've either seen that has been offered by OU or that plan to visit that excites you?
Mario Anderson is a big one, running back out of South Carolina. I think that was the guy, I think today or yesterday announced that he was going to have a visit.
He put it in his top 4. I don't know if he's visiting or not. He might be, but I think his top 4 is like OU, USC, Cal, and Memphis.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's the one that stands out to me. And I mean, if you can land him, or I know there's Samuel Franklin, I'm looking at the list right now, out of UT Martin. That could be, you could have a receiver and running back room that's really crowded, because obviously you got Sawchuck coming back. Tawi Walker was at practice today. He's in the transfer portal, but who knows what's going to happen with that. You got Javonte Barnes back, and obviously Taylor Tatum, 5-star, best running back in the 2024 class, is coming next year. So, yeah, that could be huge. It's so interesting, just the contrast on the offensive side. Like, you got receiver, running back, and quarterback locked up, and then tight end and offensive line. It's like a catastrophe. Like, you have no idea what's going on. I mean, obviously, you got Davion Mitchell, who's coming in. What a talent he is. But, you would think there's going to be a lot of portal movement there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think getting a running back, whether it's Mario Anderson Jr. or whoever, just because Marcus Major, Dalen Smothers, Tawi Walker, who you mentioned practice today, interestingly, hopefully we'll have some more information on that, but he's still in the portal to my knowledge. So that's 3 OU running backs in the portal. You'd like to add 1, even though, like you said, Taylor Tatum's coming in. But the position I'm looking at, especially now that Cayden Green's in the portal, is offensive line. I think there's another Michigan State offensive lineman in the portal, Gino Vandemark. I think he started a few games, if I remember correctly. Maybe going out and adding him, or a guy like Fabichi Nwaiwu from North Texas, who Seth Luttrell recruited. I think obviously also the biggest one is Andrew Makuba, the safety. He was highly recruited. Brent Venables landed him when he was at Clemson. He's visiting Norman, and I think there are a lot of schools in on him. I think Texas maybe and some other schools. So that's going to be a big one. See if Brent can snag him from Clemson. But Lewis, other than running back, offensive line, tight end, what are some positions maybe under the radar? I think last week I said kicker, which OU does have a kicker that visited this past weekend. Not sure if they've offered him yet or not, but it's the Tulsa kicker. So obviously Brent Venables knows there's a need there. But what are some other positions that you think OU could target in the portal here in the next month or so?
I mean, we were talking about this before, but I feel like they need a backup quarterback.
Yes.
I mean, you're rolling into the SEC, and if Jackson Arnold gets hurt, you're looking at probably Davis Bevel, maybe freshman Michael
if
Hawkins.
Jackson Arnold gets hurt, you're looking at 0-8 in the SEC.
Yeah.
OU needs a backup.
Definitely. I think you could use some more depth at probably defensive back, although you got more so safety. Because, I mean, Key Lawrence leaves. Obviously,
huge Billy coming back.
Yeah. Billy Bowman and Peyton Bowen. It's going to be tough to say that fast next year, their last names. But that's just that's going to be such a lethal duo heading into the SEC. Linebacker is one where I look for guys at OU to leave. Because, like, we've talked about that before. But, I mean, Danny coming back. We know how close he is with Jaron. Jaron didn't play well the last half of the season, didn't get a lot of playing time, but like really close with Danny, really close with Brent. I mean, I've talked about him possibly entering the portal, but after, I don't know. Yeah. I can't really see it anymore.
You would think Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie are staying because the futures they have and the way they played down the stretch. But yeah, no, linebacker's an interesting one. I mean, obviously you have Samuel Omosigo coming up in that room. I mean, it is a little crowded, and it is easy, like you said, to point to a guy like Jaron and be like, obviously a good player, just like we were talking about with the receivers, just a crowded room. But I think Brent Venables and Ted Roof and those guys are happy to have that type of problem. But trying to think what we haven't discussed since we last potted. Andrew Rame, Tyler Guyton declared for the NFL draft. Billy Bowman announced he's returning. OU landed Spencer Brown literally the day that we recorded, the Michigan State offensive lineman who seemingly slides right into one of those tackle spots. Probably either replacing Walter Rouse at left tackle or Tyler Guyton at right tackle. You would think. And you would think Jacob Sexton probably takes. I think they're probably doing this as we speak. Learning Cayden Green left today, they're probably like, okay, what do we got? Who's going to be where? Because Andrew Rame's gone. We would think Troy Everett, the Appalachian State transfer, probably slides into center. But you've got to go get a couple more guys in the portal, I would think, just solely based off Cayden Green's exit. It's huge.
No doubt. I've thought of one that we didn't discuss. Dillon Gabriel,
That's
Oregon.
True. He's an Oregon Duck.
How about that?
How do you feel about that?
I feel like he's gonna have success there. It's a good opportunity for him to prove that he doesn't need Jeff Lebby to be successful. He doesn't need that offense to be successful. And Oregon, they're scary, man. I mean,
Will Stein is a great young offensive coordinator. I could see him having similar success to Bo Nix this season. And the only thing, Oregon, it'll be interesting because Oregon obviously joins the Big Ten. I think Ohio State goes to Eugene. I think they play Michigan as well. They got a tough first year in the Big Ten, but it'll be fun. Like, I really like Dan Lanning and that crew up there. And I saw like Walter Nolan visited over the weekend, like the big defensive tackle from A&M who was like top 5 overall player last class. So Oregon might be making moves, but good for Dillon. From an OU perspective, I would just say, Dillon gave it all he got for OU, and both sides really got what they wanted out of it. So I think OU fans are gonna forever remember Dillon Gabriel as kind of like that bridge from the Riley to Venables era, and he did a lot of good here. But I think we would all agree that it's Jackson Arnold time. So
no doubt. And I mean, going down the stretch there, you thought maybe there's a chance. You heard the rumors about Dillon and USC, that possibility. I think it's best for Dillon that he didn't do that because everything he did at OU might have been overshadowed by him joining Lincoln Riley. But yeah, just a good fit for him. And
sure.
I mean, what he did at OU, you mentioned it. Everybody says it. I think it's true. OU needed Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel needed OU. Perfect combination.
And I think he's probably making more money than if he would have entered the draft this year.
Good for him.
Good for him, for sure. what else did we see at practice and learn in availability today? Something pops into my mind, Lewis, but you were there. I was taking a final. What were your main takeaways other than like people being shocked about Cayden Green's portal entry?
Main takeaways. Jackson Arnold talked a lot about Seth Luttrell and Joe John Finley. He had high praise for them, especially Seth. The overall vibe I got was that, they're still using Jeff Lebby's terminology, his plays. Seth has kind of put his own little twist on him, but it's not fully Seth's offense yet because it's only been a couple weeks since that departure. But yeah, that I thought it was interesting. Jackson Arnold was asked straight up about Dillon Gabriel and if Dillon Gabriel would have stayed, what would you have done? He said, I would have had to definitely evaluate where I was at. Didn't give a clear answer on that. But big news was Jaleel Farouk.
That's what was coming to my mind.
Said he's leaning towards staying at OU, which... I mean, it bulks up the receiver room for sure, but you got to wonder. I mean, you have so many guys there. Deion Burks, Andrell Anthony, Jaleel Farouk. Is Jaleel going to boost his stock, or is he going to be kind of the wide receiver 3, maybe even 4 behind if Nick Anderson keeps stepping up? I mean, you got to wonder about that.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of was interested in him saying that in general. Like, what does he mean by that? Does he mean go to the draft, go in the portal? But you bring up a good point. I mean, we talked about how crowded this receiver room is. Obviously, Jaleel, with the experience he has here and the pedigree, he would probably be right up there as one of the primary receivers next season, I would think. But why not go somewhere else and be that number 1 guy for sure and boost your stock in the draft? So
right. He also said he was working everywhere in practice. Like he was working some at running back. So.
Well, with the limited depth that they have at running back now, I can see that for sure. But any other OU portal? I know this is probably an OU portal podcast here. We're going to talk a little hoops at the end, but and then obviously I think we'll pod again before the bowl game. You think?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so we won't do predictions for that. We'll probably pod over Zoom before the bowl game, but... Any other portal talk that we can think of before we move on to hoops?
Yeah, cornerback is now coming to my mind. I feel like you have depth there, but do you have main guy? I mean, Gentry Williams, sure. Yeah. But Woody Washington's moving on. That's huge, and that's the leader of that group. Obviously, there's linebacker. You have to get guys at offensive line. I feel like you got to get a tight end there as well. Those are the main positions. And then if you can get a defensive lineman that's like a stud, a star, because you really don't have that. Ethan Downs is a good player, but he's not.
You have Stone coming in, but obviously he's going to be a true freshman. He's going
PJ didn't show us that much this year. Obviously, the potential is through the roof, and you expect him to have a big jump sophomore year.
I expect his sophomore year to pop, but yeah, I mean, I think you're correct. I think it'll be interesting to see if OU can pull a big time defensive lineman coming up, and I think they're going to try. So it'd be interesting to see. But you definitely don't want to rely on true freshmen going up against SEC offensive linemen, probably. So
no doubt.
But another name I think OU had reached out to was that A&M offensive lineman, Chase Bisonitis or whatever. So that might be a potential Cayden Green replacement there. That just popped in my mind. But let's talk some OU hoops, Lewis. Last week, beat Providence by what, 20-something? 21, something like that? Yeah. Here at home in Norman. And then on Saturday at the BOK, you can go read our coverage of it on OUdaily.com, but we had ejections from coaches. We had 6 technical fouls in the game total, and OU just rolled Arkansas.
I like the OU Arkansas rivalry. Yeah. It's one that it's kind of like OU Mizzou had and is now having off the field in football. But I like it. I like that that's coming back, and maybe we'll see more.
I covered
matchups.
It 2 years ago at the BOK. It's a fun game. I think Porter talked about it. They're gonna miss playing that in Tulsa, neutral site, because I think it's gonna go home and home since the SEC. But I think Muss and Porter have kind of developed a little rivalry there. So, but yeah, fun game. But what about this hoops team, Lewis? Javion McCollum just keeps doing his thing. this to me, and they were ranked number 11 in the AP poll this week, which highest they've been in a while. But this to me is just prime example of how to rebuild a roster through the portal. I mean, you've heard me probably on this podcast, but I know you've heard me in the past just talk down about OU basketball recently in Porter. But man, gotta give credit where credit's due. Totally went out and got the right players with the right fit. They're longer, they're more athletic. The speed is there. Javion McCollum's a pure scorer. They really got everything you need from the portal, and it's just been crazy to watch. But obviously the elephant in the room is the Big 12's coming. But I'm really looking forward to this North Carolina game coming up. That's really going to be a test to see if like OU can match up against some of the big programs. But
that's going to be the big one. I think OU, they've proven that like this is a tournament caliber team, no doubt. But now they're ranked number 11. Now they're 9-0, one of the only undefeated teams in the country. Now it's like you're riding really, really high. Can you compete with North Carolina? And then after that, can you compete with Texas, with Houston, with some of those schools? It's going to be big. I think they're a tournament team, almost no doubt at this point. And like you said, Porter rebuilding the roster, it's just been a great job by him, no doubt. They look like night and day compared to last year. Last year was boring as hell. I mean, my God.
I'm really interested to see whenever they do lose a game, because they're going to lose a game. I want to see because I could see this going one or two ways. They lose a game, then they lose most of the rest of their games, and they just fall apart and barely get into the tournament or something. But I want to see, once they lose that game to like a quality Big 12 team or even to North Carolina, do they bounce back and upset a Kansas or beat a Texas? Like, I want to see if they can, once they lose, not, completely fall apart, because a lot of times we see college basketball teams do that, and we've seen OU do that in the past. But I'm looking forward to those games against Houston and Texas and Kansas and some of those big-time games. But I think bracketology today released for the first time and had OU as a 4 seed, which is insane. That I expect that to go down, but this does look like a tournament team in my mind. No doubt.
I see a 6 or a 7 seed, honestly.
Yeah,
I think they
in the Big 12 and prior to the season will be huge.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't think they're. I think they could beat Texas, Houston, Kansas. I don't think they're better than those teams, though, by any stretch of the imagination. I think they could potentially land in the top 25 when it's all said and done.
I think Baylor's still undefeated. Like, the Big 12 is just tough, man. Kansas State's going to be always up there and good. I don't know how they're doing now. I think West Virginia's pretty bad. But
yeah, they're awful.
I think they're like only the only team you can point to and be like, they're bad. I don't know how the new schools are, like UCF. I think BYU was undefeated up until recently.
Yeah, they're solid.
I don't know how UCF and Cincinnati are, but
Cincinnati was undefeated, lost to Xavier Saturday, but they're solid.
Leave it to Skyline Chili over here. But
there you go.
All right. I think that about wraps up, unless there's been any portal additions or subtractions in the last couple minutes, which I don't think there has been. Lewis, anything last to say, either on portal or OU hoops before we get out of here?
I think expect more from it, no doubt, over the next week.
It's not over.
Yeah, by the time this podcast comes out, we'll probably have to redo it because everything will be wrong, and maybe OU adds 4 offensive linemen over the night. But Colton and I will certainly be working long hours in the coming weeks up to the bowl game, and even after that. We got signing day next Wednesday. That's going to be huge. So
maybe we can pod next week and preview signing day.
Definitely.
Let's do it.
Stay
All right,
tuned.
Lewis, Raser, Colton, Sulley. Stay tuned to OUdaily.com. Follow us on socials. Listen to the podcasts wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, whatever it is. But we'll catch you next time.